Hi, I'm Alex from Zest, and today I want to share with you our growth mapping framework. This is a really important part of the work that we do when working with different clients, and it's also useful as a standalone product if you're looking to grow your own business. So in short, it's separated into three key sections. So we have profile, position, and profit. The profile section looks at your business, your customer, and your competitors. And then once we understand more about those three elements of what we're looking at, we can then jump into position. So we're looking at changing your messaging, we're looking at creating a content map, and also looking at lead magnets and conversion events that are going to be the things that actually, they're the magic moments where someone is happy to exchange their data and information for the value that you're giving. So everything leads towards a conversion then. And lastly, we have the profit section. So we want to be able to forecast what growth could look like and how it can be achieved. And often this is made up of many different metrics and many different milestones, such as how much traffic's coming to your website, how many inquiries are you getting, how many of those inquiries turn into a qualified lead, how many of those qualified leads then go into your next stage, so let's call it sales qualified leads, and how many of those then receive a quote and ultimately a sale. And then looking at channels and tactics. So now we understand much more about your customer. How are we going to reach them? How are we going to create the touch points along the journey to help them to make their decision? And then lastly, from there, we then turn this into a series of tests, and we use test-based marketing to unpick the log towards achieving the growth that you're looking to achieve. Because we can't guess it through a marketing plan, that says that you only have one way of doing things. And if it doesn't work, you can often find yourself stuck. So we prefer a test-based model where we're trying to achieve successful tests, more successful tests than not, that follow a strategy towards an objective and ultimately towards the growth of your business moving forward. So let's get started. So this is the content ideas exercise from our growth mapping section. And what this is really good for is to generate ideas around the kind of questions that your potential customers might be asking. And in particular, you can also start to map these questions to different stages within their journey. So whether it's kind of discovery-based questions, for example, if someone is trying to find out how to do something, or further down the line, which is maybe a more qualified question. So maybe looking at things like pricing. For once they understand what the product or service is that they're looking for, they might start to modify their search to ask things like examples or pricing or resources. So you can see in front of us that we've got this kind of really simple skeleton layout. And in the center, we've got just an area where we put your product. So for this example, we're just going to go with e-commerce fraud. It's a big topic at the moment, and it's something that I know will generate a lot of results for this example. And in the middle of that's where we start with our product. So in your case, what you want to do is think about the thing that you're selling, and we try and segment those into products or services. If you kind of just do a catch-all, then you will still get results, but maybe not as specific a result as you would like, and that could be more useful. If you're an accountancy firm, of course you could do accountancy, but you might also want to look into things like tax audits or management reports or something like that. So we're going to go with e-commerce fraud, which is actually quite generic, but you could get e-commerce fraud protection or chargeback fraud protection, something like that. We're going to use two tools for this. We're going to use something called Also Asked, and we're going to use something called Answer the Public. These are both free tools to use, and what they do is they basically generate a load of questions that people are asking. So they look at things like the Google, sort of Google related questions or related searches, and they will map out the results that are kind of relevant for your search. So we'll just put it through its paces now, and then I'll show you what kind of questions come up. So that search has now been completed. And as you can see on my screen, we've got some questions that have popped up. So for example, how to prevent e-commerce fraud, or how to detect e-commerce fraud. There's a couple of good ones over here in the top right. But you've also got stuff like where to report online fraud. So kind of relevant questions, but not quite related to the e-commerce side of things directly in terms of a keyword match. If I jumped over to Also Asked, we can see kind of a similar thing. So we can look at a few questions that are related to that search, or how do I report e-commerce fraud, again as a popular one, but also things like how can I stop being scammed online, or what to do about it, or where can I complain. You can start to begin to harvest some of these questions and then put them into the tool. So if we took how to prevent e-commerce fraud, what I'd be doing here is literally just adding some different examples in so that we can start to build out a bit of a spider web of potential options when it comes to content. And these are all questions that are being asked by your potential customer. So it's worth playing around to see kind of what yields the best results. But ultimately, this will give you just a really great seed list of questions that your potential customers are asking that you can potentially provide the answer for. And I recommend mapping this against your AIDA journey, which is another exercise and covered in another video, to make sure that your questions or your content is geared around each stage of the journey throughout that buying cycle. I've just filled out this exercise just a little bit more to show you a working example. But you've got questions here like how to prevent e-commerce fraud, where to report e-commerce fraud, where can I complain about e-commerce, what can you do if an online retailer rips you off, can chargebacks be reversed? There's lots of different questions here that will become really useful and give you lots of ideas for what to base your content around. What I also want to show you is on one of these tools, so looking at Answer the Public here, you've also got different sort of listed examples and ideas of some of the searches that are coming up that don't really match the kind of question style that we were looking at before. So in this case, you've got things like e-commerce buyer fraud, e-commerce fraud case study, e-commerce fraud cost. You've got fighting e-commerce fraud, how to tell if an e-commerce site is legit, which was also one of the questions that came up here. So there's plenty to put your mind to and try to get some really good answers as a result of doing some really basic research using tools that are free on the internet.